The opinions expressed in this video reflect the opinions of the participants only and do not reflect the opinions of the producer or the George Washington University Law School. The George Washington University Law School and/or the George Washington University in no way endorse this video. The George Washington University Law School is located about a third of a mile from the White House in the Foggy Bottom area of Washington, D.C. Across the street is the IMF and World Bank headquarters. This location in the heart of Washington, D.C. allows students access to all areas of law and politics for both social and professional endeavors. George Washington is the fourth largest law school in the country with full and part-time enrollment of nearly 1,700 students. In addition to the JD, the school also offers several other master's and joint degrees, bringing total enrollment to nearly 1,900 students. JD students are not given their individual class rankings. However, students ranking in the top 15% are designated George Washington Scholars, and students between the top 15 and 35% are designated Thurgood Marshall Scholars. George Washington was recently ranked as the 28th top law school in the country, having slipped from 20th in 2007 and 8. Several of the school's specialty categories ranked higher, including intellectual property law at number 3, international law at number 8, and environmental law at number 12. Let's meet some students.
My name is Dan Stromberg. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I went to University of Rochester for my undergrad. I was a poli-sci student. I'm a 2L here now. I decided to come here really because I wanted to be in a big city and I didn't get into any better schools, to be honest.
Okay, my name is Patrice Sultan. I'm from New Jersey. I did my undergraduate degree in philosophy at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I decided to come to George Washington University in part for its reputation, also because it's located in Washington, D.C., and because it's so strong in lots of different areas of law that if you're not certain what kind of law you want to practice, you have a good chance of being in a strong program no matter what it is that you want to do.
Hi, I'm Joe West. I'm a first-year evening student at George Washington University Law School. I chose this school because it was the best one that I got into, and you're crazy to not to go to the best ranked school that you get into.
My name is Brooke Marcus. I grew up in Oklahoma City. I went to Colorado College for undergrad, not University of Colorado, a little liberal arts school. But I'm a 3L here, so about to be done. And what drew me here was I A, hadn't lived in this area of the country. B, it's such a good place to go to school, period, much less law school. And there's so much government agencies and international exposure that I wouldn't get anywhere else, so I figured I'd take advantage of it while I'm in school.
My name is Jared Scholes, and I started here at George Washington 2 months ago. This is my first semester here. I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I went to law school in Oklahoma City University, and I graduated there in May. I got done in May and took the Illinois bar exam and decided to go to George Washington for my LLM program. I went to a regional school in Oklahoma, and they didn't have much intellectual property work, and so I figured what better place to study intellectual property law in the nation's capital.
How would you describe the workload?
I mean, it's a lot of reading, but if you can manage your time, you're fine. I mean, it's just time management.
The classes that I have now are all intellectual property classes, and Oklahoma City only had a few different classes, and so the biggest difference I feel is in the classroom discussion. People just know a lot more who are taking the classes about intellectual property, so it makes for a livelier classroom discussion.
It has been very challenging. It's the amount of work and the level of work and the competitiveness of the other students here, but that's also one huge benefit of being at GW.
Can you tell us about the evening program at GW?
I looked at all of the schools that had evening programs because my wife just got her green card and hasn't worked in the US for years, so I wasn't sure if she'd be able to make enough money for us to live on her income and my student loans. And I don't think that's necessarily common among evening students. I think most evening students are either people who snuck into the part-time program because it's a great way to sneak in with lower numbers, or are truly people whose jobs or life are such that they can't leave them or don't want to leave them. I mean, if there are people here making low six figures and that would be kind of foolish to forego the opportunity costs for 3 years. I mean, you're out $300,000. Yeah, I did look at other part-time program. I thought I was going to get into the other part-time program, and for some reason I didn't. And that's just the way life goes. Georgetown. So, and they're the only other, Georgetown and GW are really the only two schools that I would consider, if you want to be a lawyer, to go to for their part-time program. I'm switching to the full-time program next semester because my wife has been able to find a job that'll support both of us in a way that we don't have to be eating, dirt soup for the next 3 years. So I'm switching over to the full-time program, which is interesting because I believe this is one of the only law schools that does that, where you can switch to the full-time program after 1 semester of part-time study, and you basically, it's all about your second year on-campus interviewing. So I can basically just jump right in as a day student, do my second year on-campus interviewing with firms, and sort of I'm right on track with the day students.
How have you found the faculty as teachers in academics?
Pretty good. For the most part, pretty good. It's fun because you see them in news articles and things like that, and it's fun. You can be like, oh, that's the professor from my school, which you don't necessarily get in other places. A couple of times I've run across things where I'm like, oh, my undergrad professors were better, but that's few and far between.
They seem to be great teachers first, and researchers and practitioners as well. And it's really hard because teaching law, especially the first year classes, is extraordinarily difficult. It's as hard as it is to learn it.
All the faculty here have really impressive credentials and really know their stuff, which, I mean, I guess is obvious at law school, the law school level, but these people, clerks in the Supreme Court, have got their JDs at Yale and NYU. They're really top-notch. Some of them are obviously better teachers than others, but
Very smart professors here, and they keep you on your toes. So
I went yesterday and stopped by the office hours of one of my professors and sat down, and no problem, sat down, chatted with me 15 minutes, not only just about, hey, what's your question, kid, but also just some general things about life and law and potential practice areas. And he said, hey, if you get down to a short list of firms that you're interested in, come back and talk to me. My one professor said at the beginning of class he wants people in groups of 3, 4, 5, 6 to take him out to lunch and get to know you that way. So very accessible, very cool. And email, email has kind of transformed office hours in a way because professors are always available, and I've had great luck emailing professors.
How have you found your fellow students academically?
In every way, fantastic. Actually better than I hoped. Everybody's uniformly bright. They're uniformly driven, but not in a way that's annoying, other than a very few people. And this idea of competitiveness in law school, I think, is one that doesn't exist as much in the top 20, 30 schools because you're kind of guaranteed a decent job where you can pay off your loans. I think where this competitiveness really comes in, and where you hear about snarky classmates, is in a place where the top 20% of people can actually be lawyers, or can actually get jobs that can allow them to pay off their loans.
you not only learn from the professors who are some of the best in intellectual property in the country here, but also from your classmates, and classmates being from all over the world, from India, from Japan, Korea, Taiwan. And so you get not only perspectives from about the U.S., but all over the entire world as well. So,
there's some people that definitely have unique, interesting backgrounds. People with biology and medical backgrounds, and people with the arts. I have a friend who has a master's in photography. And there's a lot of people who are just like me, went straight from undergrad, just have career focus, and aren't the most interesting of people.
People are very motivated here, so it just can't help but rub off.
Academically, I found everyone has very different backgrounds, and so they all bring really different experiences to the table, which is really helpful. You have, no matter what kind of case we have, there's always someone who has a background either in that field, from where they've worked or what they've studied in undergrad.
How have you found your fellow students socially?
Socially, law school, Lena.
Socially, I found it's been really welcoming, especially the Black Law Student Association here has been extremely welcoming, and they have a lot of events and everything like that. So
I think there's a good deal of socializing that goes on. I don't think there's a whole lot of not a lot of barriers to socializing with other people. So it's good in that respect.
The thing about the LLM program is everybody's kind of in the same boat as I am, and that being they all moved from different cities, from different countries.
Students, I mean, every week on Thursdays there's free beer inside, and there's a bar review. Not everyone, a lot of people go out to different bars every Friday. Last week we had a big Halloween party. Over 1,000 people came.
Just people are very intense on their schoolwork here. So I mean, either they didn't socialize a lot in college because they were studying very hard, or they're so wrapped up in competing with everyone else that it makes them a little bit less easygoing, we'll put it that way.
I just feel like a city like Washington, D.C. can be big and overwhelming, but when you have a small group that you're studying with, it makes it a lot easier for a transition.
Clearly they're serious students, but they party plenty.
What drew you to law school? Why do you want to be a lawyer?
I guess there's two kinds of people who are looking to get a law degree and people who want to be lawyers. And people who want to be lawyers shouldn't go to a school outside of the top 30. People who just want to get a law degree, maybe you can go to a lower ranked school.
It's a good question. It's a question I get asked in interviews.
I was a philosophy major, so it was, there's not philosophy factories out there. It was the logical progression of where to go.
Speaking and just advocating using your skills as an orator and a writer, and kind of using all your intellectual prowess to help other people, and it really helps drive the ego, to be honest.
I want to do something at the intersection of business and law, maybe finance and law. I think I made a mistake in undergrad of specializing a little too much, and I don't want to do that here. I think a lot of people here have interest in intellectual property. Probably a lot of them on the soft side, which is really a difficult area to get into because it borders on entertainment law, and just like anything that's branded entertainment, the barriers to entry are really high, and it's a lot less of a meritocracy.
What do you think of Washington, D.C. as a city?
There's the oft-quoted thing that D.C. is great because this is where the law of the country happens, and certainly to an extent that's the case. How much of that is actually accessible to the average law student is debatable.
I love D.C. I really wanted to come here, specifically to D.C. before I applied. D.C. I find there's a lot of the perks of living in a big city, but it's really livable, manageable, not so overwhelming. It's kind of like a small town meets a big city.
As interwoven with the city as it is, there's a lot to do off campus. Again, using Cornell as an example, I cannot imagine what you would do in Ithaca on the weekends unless you were growing something in your backyard, or I don't know, if you like fishing and hunting or something, I don't know. But it would be very different than what you would do here. One of the assignments for civil procedure was we had to go see a case. And most places, if God forbid I was going to school at Cornell or something like that, what are you going to do? Go to the Ithaca magistrate and see like some kid getting busted for smoking pot? Here I can go and see this big diversity of jurisdiction case that on its face is not all that interesting, but is legally interesting.
I love DC. I love being here. It's a big city, but it's not huge, and you just feel like you're at the center of the universe here. Everything is centered in DC, and there's so much going on all the time. Always.
It's just endless. There's almost too much stuff to do. It takes away from almost your studies.
There's so many people in your 20s here that it's absurd. I mean, it's just, this whole town is almost geared towards educational types or academic types in their 20s and 30s everywhere. So, I mean, it's a really fun city. People get too caught up in law school and don't appreciate that as much.
It's professional schools. You have to look at it as what does X equal in terms of getting you a job? And I think that's the way most people at top schools are thinking about it, or I would hope they are if they're spending this much money. And DC is great, but the DC market is small and it's very competitive. So people coming to GW, I think, and even to Georgetown, don't understand how competitive it is, which is why both Georgetown and GW place really well in New York, because it's a much larger legal market. I mean, DC is, a lot of guys who are at the top 5 schools are really interested in DC, because if you're not interested in the business side of law, let's say, this is a great place to come for the big other side of law, which is power. And DC is all about power, not as much about money, from what I've seen. But the firms, the sort of the barrier to entry is a lot higher in terms of where you need to be in your class to be set for DC.
Do you think people tend to talk more politics because they're in D.C.?
You know, it depends on what area that you're studying.
It tends to be a more left-leaning school. But there's a Federalist Society here, and there certainly are people for whom, especially because of the polarization in D.C. of people who work on the Hill for Republicans, people who work for Democrats, and never the twain shall meet. But no, I would call the school liberal, as most of the schools above in the top 30 are.
Everyone in DC talks about politics. It's just kind of, I mean, more so than anywhere, I would say, just the nature of it. Students to a certain degree, and professors definitely, you can figure out which ones fall on certain sides of things, but I mean, nobody in an offensive way.
I think I discussed politics a lot before I came here also, so I don't know if I could say that, but it's definitely a good forum for discussion of all that kind of stuff. Being here in DC and meeting other attorneys who practice here, you learn a lot about working in the government as well.
This is a pretty unique time in history to be in DC and studying law. But no, I don't think there's any express tie between what's going on in class and the law. I'm sure that's very different in 2L and 3L classes that are a little more specific.
As a law student in DC, are you interested in going into government?
I was initially, but now I'm going to Austin, Texas, and working for a firm there doing land use type environmental stuff.
I'm not interested in government now. I wouldn't say most of my classmates are interested in government. A lot of them are. A lot of them take administrative law, which doesn't interest me at all. I wouldn't say, I think if they have opportunities to go into private practice and make a lot of money, that's what they're going to do, but there's some people that are very focused on government, but I don't think it's the majority by any means.
What are the benefits of going to school in DC?
For internships and things like that, there's so many government agencies where you can get experience during the semester. I mean, you can't do a legal internship with the EPA when you're, at University of Oklahoma, for instance, or Colorado even. It's hard to do that kind of stuff.
One thing, though, is Judge Roberts is going to be one of the 3 judges in our constitutional law moot court competition later in the year, so that's pretty big. That's pretty cool. Be outside not bundling up in November. The weather here is great for me. The summer is really hot. But the rest of the year is perfect. As far as I'm concerned, although my friends in California and Florida disagree, but I say there is no winter here. There's snow on the ground for like 2 days, and to me it's a big change from what I'm used to. The benefits are it's one of the biggest legal communities. In terms of jobs, it's one of the biggest legal communities in the country. There's almost as many jobs as New York. I guess it's second to New York, and we kind of have a head start and an inside edge in getting those jobs, and especially in government, as you mentioned. Getting government jobs, we're here all year, so except for the summer, we have a big advantage. We're only competing against kids from Georgetown and American for jobs during the year.
As far as the area that I want to go into, I just don't see any better place to start your career initially in intellectual property.
And then this is both a positive and negative, is that everyone here is in law school or a lawyer, which is nice in terms of you're in the same boat with everyone. It's horrible in that it gets really old really fast of everyone doing the same thing, and it makes it really, really, really competitive when it comes for paying jobs.
What kind of person might not be happy at GW?
I guess if you come from a smaller city and you move to DC and you don't adapt that well to new places, new people, and you're not outgoing, you're not willing to meet new people. I mean, you don't have to put that much effort into it, but there has to be some kind of effort.
I think a very conservative person might find themselves to be in the minority here, and that's one.
I would think some people, if their ego is in a certain place, and it would really only be the reputation of the school. We're good, but we're not elite. I think that's the only kind of person where it's not really the facilities or anything like that here. It's really just what echelon we're.
A person who's looking at law school as purely an academic exercise, of which I think there are very few people who are doing that, and most of them, if they're smart enough, end up at Yale. I think any school outside of Yale and maybe Stanford, the push is this is a professional school. This is not an academic degree. It's a professional degree. It's to get a job. So someone who wasn't quite as interested in that aspect of law school and would probably have a problem here because it's very job-centric, as well it should be, because I think most people feel that, hey, that's what we're paying for. We're paying for the name, the great professors, and the options. You want to have a big field of options.
I mean, it's a pretty easy environment because the city is the way it is, that you can adjust pretty well to it no matter where you come from, I'd say.
Do you need a car to go to school here?
No. I drove my car out here from Washington State, where my parents currently live, and I don't even use it, hardly ever. The metro system is great here, and I can actually walk to school from where I live.
You can get anywhere you need to get by metro, by bus, by walking.
Do you find GW and your law school experience to be expensive?
DC, there's no way to do it low cost unless what you give up in commuting, it would be enormous. It would be the equivalent, like coming from New York, it would be the equivalent of like having to live in Long Island and commute into Manhattan to really find something cheap. Because there's just nothing all that cheap around, especially if you are married or especially if you have a life.
Not if you don't mind getting in a lot of debt. I mean, it is, but that's kind of the nature of most of the law schools. That's just kind of the way things go right now with education, that you're kind of investing in yourself that, all right, I'm going to take out this loan on the bet that going here is going to give me a job where it's not going to stress me out to have to pay it back.
In anywhere that's within like walking or quick biking distance to the school, it's $1,500 for a one bedroom. So, I mean, it's very close to New York prices around here. And the financial aid they give you really comes out to be about $1,100 a month for room and board. So the idea is that they want you to share, and what are we going to do? People coming out with $300,000 in debt at the end of it. So I think that's in a way good, because it kind of forces you to really realize how frugally you need to live to get by on $150,000 in 3 years, which sounds ridiculous, but of course a lot of that goes to the school, and very little of that goes to me, the student.
Where do students tend to live?
I find a lot of the students live in the Foggy Bottom area.
A lot of students, especially in their first year, live in Foggy Bottom near here.
Actually, I read in the paper, a lot of students have been moving outside Foggy Bottom area too, because there's a lot of neighborhoods that, at least for me, that have a lot of character to it.
I live north of the DuPont, in between DuPont and U Street, which I love the area. Some students live in Georgetown. They're really all over. A lot live in the Northeast, near the Capitol. A lot live in Virginia if they want to save money. It really depends on how much they're willing to spend.
What advice do you have for law students who are looking at law schools in general, and GW in particular?
I think the biggest thing is just finding a place to live, and then when you get out here, things just kind of fall into play regarding school, because George Washington just provides so much guidance to students that it's really hard to get off the beaten track here.
Don't be a smart 22-year-old who has no experience in the real world. Jump into law school, be successful, and jump into a law firm because the way that they work is you're going to work very, very hard as a lawyer. And I think a lot of people who never see some other areas and other industries, even other business service areas, don't quite understand that not everybody works that hard, and that sometimes you can actually make more money doing something else. I would also strongly urge people to get to know some lawyers before you even consider applying for law school. Talk to them. I talked to lawyers from partners of Vault 50 firms to the local ambulance chaser. And I learned something interesting from all of those guys. And I read a lot of books, research the heck out of it. Don't go into it just because there seems to be nothing else to do with your life. That's a really poor way of making decisions. And I think a large percentage of people who are smart enough to get into top 20, top 30 law schools, maybe close to half, are in that situation. Hey, I was a political science major, I scored well on the LSATs, I'll come here.
What is the best school you can get into? I think a lot of people in law school will tell you after the fact, in the job hunt, go to the best school you can get into. But I guess beyond that, go to somewhere where you're going to enjoy the 3 years.
Visit the school and look into the faculty a lot also. Visit the school to see how well you interact with the other students there and the environment. It's not necessarily the most competitive or highest ranked school that you'll fit best with. In fact, I'm glad that I picked GW instead of going to a higher ranked school instead. That I might have gotten into just because the environment's been so welcoming and it makes it easier to learn, and because the faculty here is incredible.
It's the only school, one of the only schools outside of the classic top 14 schools that have never sort of changed position that places well nationally. If you're in the top third of the class here, you're going to be able to find a market rate, and that is 125 plus bonus job in nearly any market in the US. If you're in the top 15%, you're going to be looking at really high panache firms where the exit options are going to be unbelievable or the profits per partner are very high.
Don't get so caught up in law school and get so worried about what everyone else is doing, because everyone gets very alarmist and thinks that everything is going to end or make or break their career. Just go somewhere where you're going to enjoy being, where you can break out of the school setting and get out of your head once in a while.
I think the biggest thing, if somebody's serious about law school, is to get the best possible LSAT score that you can get, because it really dictates what school that you go to.
My dean's fellow, who is like a 2L student, let's say, who teaches the legal writing class along with an adjunct, did very, very well, and he's going to absolutely a top-rate firm that he's going to be all with, with Harvard, Yale, and Stanford guys. So that's not a possibility as you start to get down in the ranking from here. And just in terms of hedging your bets, you come out with $150,000 in loans. That's $1,550 a month, $1,600 a month for the next 10 or 15 years. GW, even if you don't get a market rate job, you're going to be able to get a job in a major metropolitan area where the pay is going to be enough that you can cover your loans, not live like a pauper. And that's a big thing. Also, they place well with public interest here, just because there's so much public interest law going on here, as well, of course, as in New York. But for that, you have to be in a situation where you're not paying off loans, or you're independently wealthy, or something like that, because those public interest jobs are simply not. You can't pay off your loans at $35,000 a year. You can't do it. Choose your law school based on the quality of firm that you can get into, because the quality of the firm is going to very much dictate your ability to lateral, because most people aren't going to last past 3 years in the big market rate firms. Understand that and get used to it, and be frugal those 3 years. Pay off your loans because you're probably not going to last. Most people don't. Most people lateral down to firms that are more lifestyle firms, or places where they have a better chance to make partner, because 95% of people don't make partner at Vault 100 firms, so they got to go somewhere.